Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.
Hello and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. Hello and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland, where we are devoted to conversations of consequence that help democracy thrive. It's Thursday, October 27th, and I'm Dr. Dorothy Malthrop, Chief Executive Officer at Open Doors Academy and moderator for today's forum on out-of-school time, which is part of the City Club's Education Innovation Series. You may have heard it called aftercare, but out-of-school time has a much broader definition, including the periods of time before school, after school, as well as summer break. Out-of-school time programs aim to provide a safe and enriching environment during critical moments in a student's growth and development. Research has long provided evidence that structured care during these hours has lasting benefits for the whole family. For students, participating in programs has led to improved academic achievement, increased social-emotional outcomes, and better nutrition. For parents, the availability of aftercare may be a deciding factor between schools and neighborhoods. It can also provide the much-needed stability to continue in the workforce or even move up the career ladder. In a city like Cleveland, where nearly half of all households are women-led, access to these services can mean increased success, particularly for working mothers. Right now, the need for after-school programs is more critical than ever. The pandemic has laid bare the educational and opportunity inequities that have long plagued America. A national study, I'm sure many of you saw it, that was published just this week, revealed that U.S. students in most states and across almost all demographic groups lost ground in math and reading proficiency. And the demand for these programs have only skyrocketed since the pandemic. For every child in an after-school program, 3 are waiting to get in. This begs us to ask, how can we better support out-of-school time services so all students can reach their full potential? Joining us here today to discuss this are 3 leaders in out-of-school time services. Dale England is Vice President for Program at the Cleveland Foundation. She brings a wealth of experience in successful programming in K-12 education, policy, and philanthropic efforts. Dr. Jennifer Harris is the Executive Director at the Rainey Institute, which provides after-school programming with a focus on performing and visual arts. It is located in Cleveland's Huff neighborhood and is host to a number of off-site programs across the city. And Nancy Mendez is the President and CEO of Starting Point, which is Northeast Ohio's go-to referral agency for childcare, early education, and out-of-school time resources. If you have a question for our speaker or panelists, you can text it to 330-541-5794. That's 330-541-5794. You can also tweet your question at the City Club, and the City Club staff will try to work it into the second half of the program. Members and friends of the City Club of Cleveland, please join me in welcoming our panelists today. I just want to say this is really cool to be up here and on this side of the room. Okay, so I'd like to kind of start at the beginning here. There's many providers of out-of-school time programs in this room who've just been doing amazing work over the past couple years, always, but particularly in these past couple years. But I'd like to just start, if we could, with a really basic definition of what out-of-school time is. So this forum is focused on the after-school hours from 3 to 6, but that's contextualized in this broader conversation around out-of-school time. And I'd love to just, if I could turn to Dale here, and if you would just start us off, what do we mean when we talk about out-of-school time?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the field doesn't have one word that describes all that all of you in this room do. And I feel like I'm at a family dinner. Because, like, I know almost all of you, and I like almost all of you. What? That's not a family dinner. And you know, the way I describe out of school time is it's all the times, all the learning that happens not when a kid is with a certified teacher, certificated teacher, in what we think of as in that 9 to 3 space, right? When most kids are in a real structured environment. But if you're working in the morning, if you're getting advice from the janitor in your school, if you are at a push-in lunchtime program, a program comes and pushes in a program, if you're in the 3 to 6 time period, in the school or out of school, if you're doing stuff on Saturdays or on Sundays with all the different providers that you guys do, all of that is the out-of-school time space. It's all what I call expanded learning. It's just another form of learning. And the way I try to get my kids to understand is you learn in school with that certificated teacher, and equally you learn out of school. And all of those are equally important to your growth and development. You're gonna learn just as much sometimes from the counselor in your school that's gonna help you 5 years down the line when you're in college as you did in the math problem, right? That you got right in that one class. We just don't have one word that always describes all of that, so we use the terms out of school time, expanded learning, extended learning, depends on what you like. It's not daycare. It's not just aftercare. It really is broader than that. I really love the term learning because the kids are all, and you know, if you have kids, they're always learning. They're always copying you, watching you, good or for bad. That is this space that we're talking about. And that space encompasses arts and STEM and everything, technology and, you know, just a little bit of everything. I like to call it an umbrella. We're all in that umbrella. And we have so many different types of children. We need that many different types of programs to be attractive to those children. And they may want to try 5 of you. And that's a good thing because by the 5th one, they'll decide what they like, right? So I feel like it's a large family. It's a place where I will just say we're not always seen. And in the last 2 years, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like you've been seen. And you've been appreciated in a way that I've not seen before, and I've been working on this for 30 years. And so I think our goal here is to talk about how we can make sure that you're being seen and supported even more going forward.
Great, thank you so much. It does feel like out of school time is having a moment here after, particularly in light of the pandemic. You mentioned a couple of things, Dale, that I just want to build on. The idea that learning happens everywhere, in school and out of school, I think was a kind of shift. I mean, we've been building towards that, but it is really promising that I think collectively we understand that learning happens in a lot of different spaces, and that something that's critical to learning is student choice, and that the students get to participate in choosing what they want to do. And I wonder, Jennifer, if you would talk a little bit about what the Rainey Institute provides and the opportunities that kids have, where choice within it, but also what type of services you provide through that.
Yeah. Well, first, I want to start off by saying that no matter where I go, I always hear a story from a parent. And what I hear most of is, Rainey saved my child's life. And it hits home, because if that's not an opportunity in and of itself, you know, not only do we provide a safe space for children to come to and allow parents to continue working every day, we provide Cleveland youth the opportunity to experience the arts, whether it's dance, music, drama, or art. We provide that opportunity, whether they're experiencing, dabbling in a little, or they want to master something. And I think I'm speaking a lot to the choir here, that everyone knows the impact that out-of-school time and the arts have on education. And we're building lifelong skills. We say that we are tapping into children, building their self-esteem and confidence, giving them problem-solving skills, teaching them how to collaborate and communicate. The arts is just the way we do it. But because it's the arts, it also helps them focus, helps their academic skills, their behavior. So it's very far-reaching what we do, and like I said, everyone knows the impact that the arts have. I think that through our after-school programming, which is not only in our site, but also within schools with the push-in model that Dale talked about, we could have a far reach for the youth in Cleveland.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'd love to just talk with you, Nancy, for a minute if you would build on what opportunities and particularly what value do you see in out-of-school time programs and after-school programs? Jennifer just mentioned many things, and I'm wondering from your perspective, what would you like to highlight?
Well, a couple things. Building off of what Dale mentioned, unfortunately, a pandemic has a way of really exposing a lot of weaknesses in our systems and society. And what I believe the pandemic showed is the importance of out-of-school time, and I think that's why it's having its moment. All of a sudden, you're a parent that typically could pay, in middle class, you could pay for out-of-school time opportunities, summer opportunities. All of a sudden, it didn't matter, they weren't there. And you saw how important it was for your ability to go back to work. So it's much more of a workforce issue than people even realized. So start off there. And many of you may be surprised to know that 80% of a child that is in school, a school-age child, 80% of their waking hours are out of the school building. And you go back to what Dale just said, that children are constantly learning. They're constantly modeling. And 80% of their waking hours are outside of the school building. We must have opportunities, learning opportunities outside the school building that enhance, integrate, and expand upon what children are learning in school. That's critical. And going back to what you mentioned, they also are learning creative thinking. They're learning critical thinking. They're learning communication, teamwork, whether it's sports, whether it's art, whether it's tutoring. It's incredibly important. So I think these are some of the things that were exposed, but I think now we highlight equity because now we have people talking about the importance no matter what, but what we do know is too many of our Black and brown children don't have that opportunity. And so we really need to think about how do we give every child an opportunity to access a quality after-school time program.
Let's talk about that a little bit. So we can see after school and summer as a equity strategy, as a way to create more opportunities for all kids, middle class kids. Some families can't afford more than what kids from other environments can, but every kid deserves these opportunities. And how do we get there? What are the things that we need to do to create more opportunities for more kids to be able to have these services? Who wants to answer?
Okay, I'll start.
I'm going to call on you down.
The one thing when you're funding in this space that is, to be honest, sad, is that we in the foundation world don't have enough money for all of the programs that we would love for kids to be able to take advantage of. And parents don't have enough money, especially low-income parents of all races, in rural areas and urban areas, to afford their kids what we know would be great for their kids. And you start to see the patterns when you get to, I've done literally from early childhood all the way through college. I mean, you start to see the college kids, and you ask them, Black, white, low income particularly, and you ask them how they got to where they are, they mention an after-school program. They mention not just the math teacher that gave them a straight A in 9th grade. It's some other passion that they were involved in that taught them perseverance, that taught them they could fail, that taught them how to communicate. So you know that this other way of learning is equally important to their growth and development. The question is, how do we get everybody to participate in that? And we don't have a government right now, to be honest, that sees that. We've taken 20 years to build up finally support for early care. That took forever and is being rolled back a little bit. We have a little bit of support for certain types of kids in certain areas, but we really don't have the buy-in that we need at this point. And I'll just talk about Ohio, in a state like Ohio, because if you really want kids to thrive and become the workers that we want them to be, and by the way, we say we need workers right now in Ohio, you gotta do this upfront work. And the upfront work costs. And the question is, who's gonna pay it? And you can't just put it on a parent. It's not enough anymore. Maybe it was a long time ago, but if you want quality, you gotta pay those workers. When I told somebody at one point what a quality program would cost, like $3,000 or $4,000 a year, they said, we can't pay that. I says, what are you paying for your individual child to go to that horseback riding program? Or to go to that swimming program? You are paying that. Other kids deserve it too. The question is, how do we make the case? And by the way, this isn't just in Ohio, it's in many places, but there are many states, and Dorothy can talk about this, that are trying to systematically, in their state or in their county, figure out a way to convince government to put more money into this space. If you put money into higher ed, you need to put money into this. You put money into early ed, that's great, it's not enough. You have to also put money into this. And I think that's the question that we should be having, and we will be having, at least up in Northeast Ohio over the next few months.
And I think why OST is having its moment, it's because one of the reasons that I think that we need to continue to push is that it's important to workforce, unfortunately.
That's right. That's right.
It comes down to the economy.
Right. That's
And
right.
so let's use that as a springboard to talk about why this is an incredible return on investment, period. For every $1 that we invest in out of school time, we earn at least $3 back in terms of savings as a society. Not to mention that it does help parents get back to work, and we are in the middle of a staff shortage. So I think that we're going to have to, as a community, as folks that really understand the importance of it, come together and come up with different ways that we could speak to the state legislator, to our business leaders, and say, this is a great investment for you now and for the future.
It's also a violence reduction program.
Absolutely.
You know that, right? There's just so many benefits. It's like, okay, then why aren't we spending more money on this up front? Instead of paying for them on the back end?
Go ahead, Jennifer.
I think we have to focus on the staff, and all the providers in the room know exactly what I'm talking about. Out of school time is part-time work. You know, you don't have benefits, you don't get paid time off, and it's exhausting because if you're an out of school time provider, you're working 2, 3, 4 jobs, sometimes 7 days a week to make ends meet. And so it's been really difficult to find highly qualified staff. And at Rainey, and I'm sure everyone else, like, we care about the impact that we have on our children and families. And so we also care and invest in our staff. But higher qualified, educated, experienced staff equals higher wages, equals higher tuition. We are very fortunate to have kept costs down to almost $13 a week for out of school time, but because we have a very robust fundraising strategy, not every nonprofit has that support or, you know, through that. And it's been very difficult, but I mean, we do it, and year after year, it's like, how do we do this? How do we keep doing this? But we owe it to our staff that are working in this field to ensure that they make a wage that they can live on. And it's been difficult.
It is challenging, and you know, Craig Dorn mentioned that ODA is, I think you called us a Cadillac, is that right, Craig, of after-school programs. But one of the reasons that we are able to sustain the work that we do and do it in the ways we do is because our team is full-time, but it comes with a really big cost. And we think a lot about how do we staff these programs, how do we create opportunities at a state and a sustainable level, and how do we braid resources and funding together to be able to do that at a systems level and at a state level. And I do want to just mention one example. I was at a conference just a couple days ago, the National Summer Learning Association conference in Washington, D.C., and there were 8 states there. Ohio was one of them. That I was representing Ohio with about 5 other people. And 5 of those states have legislated a solution to creating more sustainable funding for out-of-school time and after-school programs. I'm just going to give you one example. The state of Tennessee took a lot of the ESSER and ARPA dollars. They set some aside for direct service providers and districts and community-based organizations, but they kept a chunk of it and they legislated a solution and they funded it through some of this ARPA fund. And what they said was districts need to serve 1/3 of their kids in summer programs, not summer remediation or summer school, but summer enrichment, opportunities like the Rainey Institute gives kids, like YOU gives kids, like tons of people in this room give kids. And they put the money towards that. So we could do something like that in Ohio. I really believe that we can, but we need to work together and we need to build the coalition, which I know many of us in this room are working towards that. I wanted to ask you, Nancy, if I could for a minute, to go to, you mentioned that early child care and Pre-for-Cleve, for example, you worked in that a lot, and we have some parallels that we could draw in the out-of-school time space from the work that you and many others in this room have done in that space. And I just wonder if you would share a part of that experience or learning from that you think applies in this context.
Sure. So I was blessed to take over, join an organization, Starting Point, that was led by an incredible woman. I'm sure most of you know her, Billy Osborne Fierce, and we lost her a little over 2 years ago. She was a leader that worked with a number of other leaders across the state and created what we call now Step Up to Quality. She had a deep knowledge of early childhood education and understood what it would take to make sure that there was a definition of quality across the board, and that then we would be able to fund quality across the board, no matter what your income, no matter what your zip code, no matter what your ethnicity, your child had access to quality early childhood education. We know we have that infrastructure in Ohio, especially in Northeast Ohio, with the incredible investments and initiatives that we have now. So what did Step Up to Quality do? It basically used the research on brain development, best practices, and it answered the question, what does a child need to learn so that they're prepared for kindergarten? And so we understood that we needed specific curriculums. We needed certain types of quality staffing. We needed certain types of environments. So those same learnings we could apply to out-of-school time programs. The research is there, the connections, the expertise is out here. If we were to come together and decide, okay, let's look at the research, let's look at the best practices, and let's determine what is quality, and then we demand that of every opportunity that's out there here. This is what it means to be quality. And every child, no matter, again, their zip code or their ethnicity, will have access to a quality opportunity. And so I think that what's going to take is for a bunch of us to get together and come up with a plan on how we can convince the state and national government and for some solutions and some funding.
I think right before this meeting, when we were this forum, when we were in the other room, I think we said, let's get together right after this and have a conversation. So quality in out-of-school time programs, let's talk about that for a minute. When you know an out-of-school time program is working, how do you know it? What's working about it?
Ask the kids, especially if it's teenagers. They walk with their feet. When I see a program, and it doesn't have to be a fancy program in any way, shape, or form, by the way. Quality does not mean fancy. It doesn't mean lots of gadgets. It means the adults who are working with those kids get those kids, and they push them. And they see things that the kids won't admit to and say, why don't you try it this way? As I remember talking to somebody early on here, and I said we wanted to just offer some trainings if people wanted them for the adults. And someone said to me in the room, I'll never forget this, oh no, I'm good. I've been doing this for a long time. And I said, we're not funding you. If you're working with kids, if you have kids, they change every day. I mean, you always need new training. In fact, at one point we wanted to do something, but the pandemic stopped it. We said, we don't want to work with the kids. We want to work with the adults. We need to admit when we need training and when we don't know something. And when there's a kid there who we don't know what to do with, and we need to figure out maybe there's somebody else on our team who can deal with that kid, right? And by the way, that can start very early, all the way up to high school. So quality to me is that the adults in the room can describe every kid in that program that they are working with, what they're getting out of it, and where they need to go next, by the way. You may be done with that kid after 9th grade, and they need to go to somewhere else. How are you passing them along? Things like that, and when the conversations I'm talking about quality, I'm looking for stuff like that.
I'm going to kind of echo what Dale said, and I think that you could walk into a classroom and tell if it's a quality room by the way that the staff talk with the children, the way that they respect them, that they too are considered a learner in this process, and they're listening to the children, and that they are also questioning. You know, we learn from questions. They're not directing, they're not delegating, they're, you know, of course there's always a need for that. I think that is difficult, that our challenge in finding quality staff is the gap between you could be an artist or you could be an athlete or you could be an IT tech person, but are you an educator? Do you understand children and how you get to engage them and understand about them? And that's the gap that at Rainey we've been saying, you know, there's a gap here. So how do we work through that gap?
If I could give an example.
Please.
And I don't think my brother would mind. Because he'll never know. He's in Miami. So my brother, who I adore, was a little bit of an oddball in a family of 7, where we were all very athletic. We played sports, except for my brother. He was creative. He was a dancer, and he stuck out. And so he's a near West Side Puerto Rican boy who loved dancing, and he struggled in school. He struggled trying to find his place. Then he found a place, and it was called Caramoo. He took 2 buses, and he would take himself to Caramoo, and he got involved, and in dancing, modern, ballet, plays. My parents started to go see him dance, and he ended up going to Duke Ellington in DC for high school, and the college, now University of Performing Arts in Philadelphia for dancing. Did that for a while, but now he had the confidence, he had a passion, he knew who he was, and even after he got out of professional dancing, he went back to school and got his master's. Now he has 2 masters in early childhood education with a specialization in mental health.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
what these programs, that's a quality program.
I'm interested in what did that form at Caramoo?
He found a place, a home. He found adults who understood him. He found a place to be able to express his talent and then understand that it was talent. And it gave him the confidence then to be able to take that back to school as well. So that's what it did for him.
Thank you for sharing that. I was actually going to head into, we're going to take questions in just a minute, so we'll transition there in just a second. But I was about to transition to ask you to share a personal story. Nancy, you just did of your brother, volunteered him, thank you. But do you have a connection, a personal connection to after school or summer that you would like to share, Dale or Jennifer, with the audience?
Well, I just remember I was an athlete. I was in volleyball, and I was frustrated and not feeling like I was being listened to or heard. So my junior year of high school, I quit volleyball and did something. I went out for the dance team. I never danced before in my life, and those that know me probably would say she can't dance. But I stuck my arm out, I went out for the dance team, and I made it. But that experience taught me that I have a choice, that I could do something, and that it was my choice. My parents or no one else held me back. People said, "What are you doing? You can't do that." My coaches were mad, but I went and I did it and I made it, and I had a great time. But it was impactful.
Wonderful.
I'm definitely not a dancer. I have one personal, I would say sometimes we forget that one of the places where kids do a lot of after school is church. And I would say church was my after school, just my whole life. Everything they did, my mom just stuck us there. And it felt like being stuck for a while, and then it felt like my home in multiple ways. But the story I really give is my daughter, who, okay, maybe she won't watch this. Claire, don't say anything to her. She was kind of shy, and I'm working on youth development, so I do know what you should do. I'm just trying to figure out what's the right program. And it turned out at the school, they actually had a dance teacher. And she did dance after school, and Lena did not want to do dance. And I said, just try it. But she liked the teacher. And I knew, I can still remember the moment, walking into the auditorium. It's 6th grade. She is up on the stage with maybe just 8 other girls, and she's dancing for the first time in public. And me and her dad are very nervous. And she did great. And just coming out of her shell, and I'm not an arts person at all. I couldn't, 2 left feet. But watching her, she eventually took drama at one point because she was shy enough that she said, I'm going to learn how to speak in public just so I know how to do it when I need to do it, right? Just for kids to be able, what I want to have happen for every kid is that they are able to understand enough about themselves, not what adults say about them, what they understand about themselves, that they can pick and choose from all of you of what they want to try, right? They don't know if it's going to work. We don't know that. But you want to give them the ability to try and the access to try. And we don't want a paywall behind it, right? And because we know when they do that, they are persevering, they are understanding themselves. I talk to adults all the time and I go, I wish you'd done more after school programs, right? Because it teaches you about yourself. And the more I tell people I work with kids all the time, I want to work on youth because I want to create better adults. I feel like I'd be better if I went through other programs. So just the question is, how can we pay for it? We know what it looks like. All of you are doing it. I can mention every single program you guys are doing. They're amazing. We just got to figure out how to pay for it and how to keep quality. It's not just everybody, but we've got to figure it out, and we've got to figure it out together. Because us going individually to the State House doesn't work.
Yeah, right, yeah. We can do it. I mean, I know that this room, we could do it, and we have a vision, and we've got models. I think we can do it, and it's worth it for all the reasons that you just mentioned. Okay, let's go. I think we're good to transition to our questions now. So we're about to begin the question and answer period. We welcome questions from everyone, City Club members, guests, students, and those joining via our live stream at cityclub.org. If you'd like to tweet a question for our panelists, please tweet it at the City Club. You can also text it 330-541-5794. That's 330-541-5794. And the City Club staff will work it into the program. So I think we're ready for our first question.
Thank you. This is a panel of drum majors. I think many of us in the community here gathered are eager to march to the drum beat that you set. Talk to us about evaluation we can use across our programs that will make a loud noise in the State House that will really bring attention to the great work going on in the community.
Thanks.
Yeah, good question. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I believe that telling stories, getting our youth and parents to tell their stories is sometimes more impactful than anything. And I think it's important to get the stories out there. How, I always say, how did Rainey save your child's life? What did Rainey do? And then when I hear that story, it's like, oh, I want to capture it. I know the numbers are important, which someone else could talk about, but I always say stories.
I think it's a combination. Absolutely, you have to humanize it so that that individual can picture their child in the story that you just told and then see the importance of it. So I just want to mention that middle-class children on average receive 4,000 more hours of after-school care than low-income children by the time they're in 6th grade. Mm-hmm. And so that's, again, a stat that we really need to talk about when folks are asking questions about violence in particular neighborhoods or low graduation rates. These are the numbers that we can point to. But on the positive side, we have a lot of research that speaks to the importance of after-school programs. I believe it's the Afterschool Alliance that has had some really incredible research in large cities across the country that show that low-income children who have had opportunities for after-school programming have had higher graduation rates and higher college rates as well, and graduation rates there. So there are some research studies that, coupled with those personal stories, that I believe can arm us to make really good cases as why this is a great investment for the state of Ohio.
I would just add to that we know that when an after-school program is working, it increases, and kids are participating in that, it increases school day attendance, which then indirectly influences kids' performance and their ability to read and write and do all the things that we want them to do. It also increases their opportunities that they have. So they are more likely to try things when they've participated in an after-school program than they would if they haven't. And that can make a really big difference. And just on the stories side, I would add from talking with kids, and then also the literature, there's been many national studies done about kids who participate, particularly in after-school programs. And across the country, they say that they do three things: that they find their friends, that they make friends, and that's why they go and that's why they stay, that they have the support of a loving adult. And we know that if you have, it can be a teacher, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a teacher. If you have a loving adult in your life, you do great things. It's an ingredient for success. And the other thing that they say is they figure out what they want to do. And sometimes that means they figure out what they don't want to do. But that helps them in their future and in the work that they choose to do, and probably the confidence, like you mentioned, in your brother and all sorts of things. Okay, let's go to the next question.
Thanks, Dorothy. This microphone is your height, by the way, not mine. I'm Dorothy's board president at Open Doors Academy. I think we all saw the data that came out this week that basically said what we all knew about these kids falling behind, and the numbers were almost staggering. And I'm just kind of wondering what our panelists think we can do from an out-of-school time programming standpoint to help. I know, Dale, you said that a lot of the learning comes outside of class. What are things that we can do outside of the classroom to help get our kids back on track?
So I'll put it in two categories, I think, as a start. I mean, I'm sure many people could help answer that question. One other thing that happened these past 2 years is the link between the out-of-school time sector and the formal education sector grew. In most places it's strengthened, not in all. I know here in Cleveland we had our academic learning pods, we had all sorts of ways for our out-of-school time providers to work even closer with our schools. We've now got Say Yes, providing more money to get those programs into schools directly. All of that is good, and we need more of it. And the question is, we don't want to go back, that we're the stepchildren, because that's how I used to describe us for years. We're important sometimes. So the question is, I sometimes say, who amongst this group, what relationships do you have with your schools? Because the group that I think needs to be convinced more about what we do is teachers and principals. You may ask them and they say, I want an after-school program in my room, in my building, but they don't always know why or what type, or these 10 kids will want this, and these 8th graders will need that. They really don't, and I'm not blaming them. There's a lot on them. But we've got to find a way to convince that target population, because they speak loud. Legislators listen to them. The money follows them. We've got to find a way, and we started it a lot actually here. I think we're doing better in Cleveland than we have ever in the past. But that's one target group that I think if we want to help the kids, the adults have to learn how to work better together.
We've got a text question. So for aftercare, if parents are at work and cannot get their kids from school to the program location, it limits options. Dell and Jennifer mentioned the phrase push-in model. Has this received more support and funding as a common sense solution with the shortage of bus drivers?
Okay, so this is,
We get calls sometimes a couple a week from schools asking us to provide visual or performing arts programming within a school. They have the dollars, we don't have the staff. I mean, trying to find high quality out of school time educators that are artists that look like the kids that we serve is very difficult. The out of school time opportunities are not the same as our program. Our program provides a meal. Our program provides homework support and tutoring. It's a chunk time. Out of school, the push-in model, we're seeing that, it's like 45 minutes or 50 minutes. Would you want to go work a job where it's only 50 minutes a day and then you have to go to another program? So it's been really hard to meet the push-in model. Really difficult.
Yeah, there's some structural barriers to push in. They can be overcome when you have good relationships amongst the adults. But if you don't have that, it's hard. And our state, unfortunately, doesn't invest in transportation,
Right.
and so we're in a particular bind here.
I also find that there's the principal, Dale, is needs to be your champion, but they don't often know how to structure and develop a program, an out of school time program, to be successful. And we ask for that control. That's something that we ask for, because we found when we don't, we end up in the hallway. We don't have any support. I mean, dealing with kids, getting them in and out, and we need their support. So that principle is key in allowing to develop the program.
I think we can also keep framing it as an opportunity to create greater educational equity. And transportation is not, I always say, it's not sexy. Nobody wants to fund transportation. So in my work, I go around it and I try to fund it in all these different ways. But it's hard to raise money for that. And I think that also needs to be part of the state solution. How do we get kids to and from these opportunities, or do more school-based programs?
I think that a great solution would be working together to change whether they're state or local policies on transportation. Every day we see the school buses pass by 55th on Rainy. If they would just stop and let kids out. That is not difficult. Just stop. There's a stoplight. Open the door. We could expand our programming, but they can't. And so if the money went to them somehow, because we are not accessing all the kids that we can be.
Yeah.
Hi, can you speak to best practices around inclusion of exceptional learners in our programs? So many kids are being served on IEPs in their educational setting, but those IEPs don't follow them to the out-of-school time programming. It's a massive barrier to those and participation for exceptional neurodiverse learners.
Great, thank you. Anyone feel like they can?
I can.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So being that my background is special education, I want to accept all children in. And I think that it's important to train your staff to look at every child and their individual needs. Once you do find out, there has to be somebody in that organization, in the after-school, out-of-town program that's comfortable, that has a comfort level of asking the parent questions, connecting with the school, giving, the parent, that's the parent's document. The parent can give it to you if the school is not. But in the arts, our programming meets the needs of those kids. So it's a lot easier in our programming, but I say teaming up with the parent to be an advocate, and it's how you approach your philosophy in working with those kids.
And I'll just add, when we had the academic learning pods, we found that as a weakness amongst many of the groups, and they acknowledged it, and yet who was coming to the academic learning pods were the exceptional learners, because they really needed in-person learning. And so we did some joint trainings across all the providers that were doing the learning pods, including Mr. Arande over there. And it feels like a space where the out-of-school time providers need some more support. But we need to do it together. Because you all face it. But I will just say, you also have adults who, they won't acknowledge that they don't know. We found some that were just, when we went and visited, you could see that there were exceptional learners there, but they don't always know what to recognize. And so education has had to train themselves up in this space, partly because of lawsuits. OST providers need to do the same thing. We need to figure out a way to do that within the field. I think it's a weakness in the field. It's not just individual programs.
I'm up. Good afternoon. I'm just so honored to be here and just to hear some of this. I go way back to the Barbara Bird issue and stuff, but further back to that as a consultant at school board. And I'm in prevention. My name is Ricky V. Ward, everybody, and I'm totally blind, a graduate out of Cleveland State. I just like to throw it in because I love Cleveland State. But more than anything is that when you say that they're learning, it's the part that when they're out of school, who's teaching them? The unlearning that we're trying to solve now is that I support every principal and every teacher, but their hands are so full. And I think one of the solutions is that when I heard the young lady about her brother, and I think about UMA on the West 25th that I was working with, and then I worked with the East Side UMA. When I'm talking about the cultural difference, sometimes you have to bring that man, that third party, who can reach that child. Because we always say we handicapped. I don't like labels. I don't even say that I'm handicapped when I tell them that I got my bachelor's and my master's out of Cleveland State. I don't think I'm handicapped no more. So more than anything is that we can empower them in some way that connecting the outside, open the door from the after school program, dealing with, when you said the parents, but the parents that I'm dealing with is a broken family right now. Yes. The father's not there. He's locked up. Mother's on drugs. This is when we're dealing. So when that child comes to you, we have to build a trust. And that trust, carrying that baton of wisdom to the teacher and to the principal, then we can put the care ring around them. Because some things have been unsolved and some things are overwhelmed that nobody's hearing. Until I can get him to the art, I have to deal with the problem first. So that's the after school program we're trying to think about.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that. Trust is at the heart of all learning, really. But if kids learn from people that they love and that they trust, they're not going to learn from people that they don't trust. Thank you for that.
Okay, we've got another text question. Cuyahoga County recently slashed the budget for Say Yes in Cleveland, citing restrictions for funding. What are Cleveland area OST providers preparing for if Say Yes funding were to fall short?
Ooh. You want to take that?
Take the fifth. There has been some publicly acknowledged issues with funding for Say Yes, particularly for the family support specialist. That is being worked out, to the best of my knowledge, between the county and our Say Yes staff. Say Yes is here to stay. They've raised almost all the money for the scholarships. There's different pots of money. There's money for the family support specialist, which is publicly funded. There's money for out of school time, which is mostly publicly funded. And so I do believe that's going to get resolved. But it is an example where you never take your foot off the pedal. Even we learned this from early childhood. If you had told me that we would be fighting for early childhood right now in the state of Ohio, after all the work they did over 25 years, I would have told you were crazy. Because everybody should know about early childhood, but everybody does not. It's the same with out of school time and with what those family support specialists do. It's amazing what they do. They are what this gentleman just said. They are the wraparound, trust, loving support for these kids when they don't fit anywhere else, right? They do create the red flags and try to figure out what's happening day to day. For someone not to understand what they do, and we've had 4 years of working with them, by the way. We had tons of stories, but a few people didn't. So you got to keep your foot to the pedal.
And I would just add, just a quick aside, the attack on early childhood education started 2 weeks after I took the job. But we fought back. And we fought back with data. We fought back with collaboration and partnership. And so it can be done. And your question just highlights the importance of the time that we have now that we are talking about out of school time. We are the average middle class person felt the hurt temporarily when there was no out of school time available or summer programs available because of the pandemic. They, probably many families for the first time felt, what the struggle and the pain is when you do not have that expansion, that other place to send your child after school hours. So this is the time to really rally around this issue and push for more sustainable long-term funding on the state and federal level.
You know, there's the phrase, take advantage of every crisis.
Right.
We've had a crisis. They see you. They see us. Take advantage of the crisis right now, because in 3 more years, there'll be a different one.
Yeah, yeah, it's the moment.
We have another, hello. Oh, stop it.
So cute.
It was inevitable. In my experience, not mine, but the questioner's, this is a text question. In my experience, smaller out-of-school time program providers run into red tape issues attempting to partner with schools or school districts.
Yeah.
Do you have advice or insights on navigating that challenge?
Ooh. It's a real thing.
It's,
I think it's one of the reasons the groups like our system-wide organization, MyCom, were created, so that they can sometimes help navigate on behalf of the smaller groups, or help give them advice on how to work with particular schools or principals. We've done a couple of cohorts with smaller groups to help them build their capacity to manage through. There's a lot of red tape. But I will just say it's, in some sectors, you want to get to scale, right? You want the programs that can work with 1,000 kids or 2,000 kids. Actually, in after school, I'm not sure we want to get there. We have so many different types of kids and so many different types of programming that they should be able to take advantage of. You want the niche programming. You want the kids that only, I know it's not economically sometimes efficient, but it's better for the kids and for us ultimately as society to have the program that deals with 50 kids and they stay with those 50 kids. I've seen these programs for 5-10 years. Difficult kids that, by the way, some of the rest of us don't want. But they are willing to stay with them. They're a niche, small program that we need in the sector. The question is how to make sure that they can access the resources that everybody else can.
And I think we have a great model with early childhood education where we deal with family child care homes that need to go through a lot of red tape. They need to get certified, and they have to fill out a number of applications. And incredible people from Starting Point are some of the folks that will work hand in hand with those individuals to walk them through the paperwork, walk them through the process, and it's very effective. So the family child care homes, I'm talking about folks that maybe 10 and under, six children in a home. They were critical for the system during the pandemic because the child care centers were in their homes. So we were able to hold their hand through the process, and we could do the same with the smaller after-school programs as a community. We could come together, MyCom, Say Yes, Starting Points, and we could provide that service for our community.
I'll give an example of a strategy that we use at Rainey. Again, everyone is jockeying for the same staff for out of school time. It's like we're all jockeying for the same transportation. We have partnered with smaller organizations that provide arts for children and have staff too. And so we go into the school, and it may be that we are contracting with another organization to provide a piece of that art programming, which leverages their organization to get into a school. But that's just we've had to do that because of staffing.
I also appreciate the model that Say Yes has offered this community on out of school time, which is to work together with partners and different providers, small providers of after school time, and to kind of knit those services together under one K-8 building model, which is, I think, a really great way to preserve choice and to preserve and work with the smaller organizations and be able to offer kids a lot of different variety while maintaining kind of quality and this overarching kind of umbrella approach to this and coordinated approach to the K-8 program. Because kids do need a lot of different things, and the little ones, the K-2, are much different than the 6-8 kids. I think we've got time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions.
Yes, we've got another text question. So to what degree have the panelists found the libraries like Cleveland Public Library as key players? And what can libraries do to better help?
Good, great. I would like to.
I think the library was a key player at Rainey for years, and then the pandemic hit, and I think there's been some restructuring, and they're trying to, kind of get back. But they were a great partner. That's a safe place in a community where kids go, and it's close by. So I think that re-engaging the library to provide more programming is another strategy to reach more kids, if you have the staff.
I think they can be a very critical partner in solving long-term out-of-school time opportunities. They are a trusted, safe place in many of our neighborhoods, and we have some great leadership, I believe, in both the Cleveland and Cuyahoga libraries that are very open to these conversations.
When you think about where the most kids are after school these days, they are in libraries, they are in sports. Those are the two biggest, actually. Mm-hmm. And Cleveland is blessed to have the rec centers. Not every city has that. That's where the largest number of kids are in those three areas. If you add up all the rest of your providers, maybe that would be another target area. So when you think about after school, you have to include libraries, you have to include sports, you have to include those spaces. And all of those places teach incredible learning to kids. I'm agnostic on what. It's just get them in a safe space where adults love them and can really push them to be the best that they can be.
And in there, I think that's a great place to end, just to push kids, encourage kids, and show up for them and give them what they need, and to collaborate. Thank you so much, Dale, Jennifer, and Nancy. Thank you for being here, and thank all of you for joining us at the City Club today. Today's forum is part of the Education Innovation Series in partnership with Nordson. A big thanks to the City Club Member Education Committee for their work on this forum. We would also like to welcome guests and thank us at the tables hosted by MyCom Cleveland, Nordson, Open Doors Academy, Starting Point, and Youth Opportunities Unlimited. Also, we'll remind you that was just announced on Monday, November 7th. We will hear from Kurt Russell, the 2022 National Teacher of the Year, who's from Oberlin, Ohio. Tickets are still available, and you can find out more at cityclub.org. And that brings us to the end of today's forum. Thank you once again to our panelists. Thank you all of you, members and friends of the City Club. I'm Dr. Dorothy Malthrop, and this forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.